Alright, let's get the story finished with. Give me a moment to find where I last was. Yep. I feel them, but what do I do? How do I get the one I want? Zin's hands shook slightly as she concentrated, small beads of sweat forming on her forehead as the aether flowed sluggishly res- responded to her will. Yes, like that. It's not a mechanical thing. It is a matter of will and focus. You have the ability within you. Now pull the flows apart and let the luxurious flow through your hands. It's lighter than the others, less weighty. Rosloff stood behind the young researcher, his arms folded, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Several minutes passed, and the room grew several degrees colder, but nothing happened between Zine's hands. Otto glanced over at Rusloff with a questioning look from the corner. Sensing his attention, Rusloff nodded ever so slightly to the young alchemist. Otto concentrated and nudged a stream of aether closer to Zine, picking it apart slightly. Light gathered in her hands, like a blob of particularly viscous jelly. Her eyes went wide as the flows gathered stronger and poured out from her outstretched hands in a soft white beam of light. The caterpillars at the bottom of the cage drew towards her and eagerly ate up the flows of energy she poured through the fine mesh. I. This is. I have no idea how I'm doing this, but I'm doing it. She laughed under her breath, unable to believe the frankly impossible sight in her own hands. This feels like magic. Rozov took a step forward and cupped his hands, making a quick circular motion with his wrist. A small globe of water happily sloshed around between his fingertips. Alchemists have always had a flair for the dramatic, but it is science, I assure you, Miss Curio. Repetition and experimentation. The light faded out from her hands as she leaned back, exhausted. Well, whatever this is, it's pretty crazy. I didn't expect to be able to turn my hands into a flashlight. Uzlov, Uzlov smiled and collapsed a small ball of water, turning it to its component ethers. You could have been far more impressed several centuries ago. Alchemy was different then. Alas, needs must, and times change. Uzlov held out his hands toward Arturo. Arturo raised from the chair and crossed the room, handling Rusloff his cold iron crozier. Researcher, your help these last few weeks has been invaluable. I'm sorry to say that we've been called back to Site A2 for another project. Zane slumped slightly, frowning. That's unfortunate. I really enjoyed watching these little guys mature. The metamorphosis process for these creatures is fascinating. I hope my research notes helped. Luzov smiled at her and his heavy-laden eyes bored into her. They did. I have more than enough to update the text. On a slightly more important note, you have the required aptitude to come assist us at Site 82 if you wish. Those with the necessary alchemic aptitudes are rare, to say the least. I could speak with your director for transfer to the Alchemy Department, should you desire. The air hung heavy with expectation as a sad smile sped across Zine's face. I really appreciate that, Director, but my place is here. Everything you've taught me has been fascinating, but the work goes on, so to speak. If I have time, I'll be sure to pop over to Site A2 to visit when I get the chance. Roosevelt smiled back slightly and nodded. I assumed as such. However, it does not hurt to try. You are a brilliant young researcher. Do not give up that curiosity. And if you ever have questions about alchemy, or change your mind, you know where to find us. The alchemist gathered their belongings and clipped the heavy cage back to Ardio's back. The final sweep of the lab confirmed that they had everything, and Ruslov ducked in the director's office to say his farewells as they headed through the door. And Arturo turned to wave goodbye to Zine one last time before ducking through the door. Zine smiled and returned to the research lab to tidy up her notes and get back to work on the latest containment project. She gathered together the loose sheets, slapping them in a manila with a quick jot of a label, and filed them in her little cabinet in the corner. Just before she pulled out the next set of files, she stopped and stared down at her hands. She closed her eyes and concentrated, feeling the flow of the aethers around her. As she opened her eyes, a small spark of light winked into existence at her fingertips. For just a moment, she grinned to herself and pulled out the next set of files. Lepidoptera. Lepidopterus alchemica cinerea. These creatures present as small butterflies with third eye, and as small caterpillars in the larval stage. The Luxius aether can be used to reveal this form. Excerpt: Alchemy Creatures. R. Diaghilev. Zine Kuryu. Credited co-author. 2007. Revised 2nd edition. And there we go. That was the butterfly tail. It's so hard to say a word that you're really not familiar with. Like at all. All these science tops. But that will be the end of this stream. And next week I will be doing An Alchemist Goes to War. I should probably have. The director leads an MTF to pay Leonov Technologies a visit. An old enemy surfaces in an unexpected place. And that will be next week. See you then.